I'd just taken her tea up this morning when she said, "Graham, I think the world of you." I said, "I think the world of you." She said, "That's all right then." I said, "What's brought this on?" She said, "Nothing. This tea looks strong. Pull the curtains." Because I knew what had brought it on. She said, "I wouldn't like you to think that you're not number one." I said, "Well, you're number one with me too. Give me your teeth, I'll swill them." What it was, we had a spot of excitement yesterday. We ran into a bit of Mother's past. I said to her, "I didn't know you had a past. I thought I was your past." She said, "You?" I said, "Well, we go back a long way. How does he fit in vis-a-vis Dad?" She said, "Oh, he was pre-Dad." I said, "Pre-Dad? I'm surprised you remember him. You don't remember to switch your blanket off." She said, "Oh, that's different. His name's Turnbull." I said, "I know." He said. I'd parked her on her usual seat by the war memorial while I went and got some reading matter. Then I waited while she went and spent a penny in the disabled toilet. She's not disabled, her memory's bad, but she says she prefers their toilets because you get more elbow room. She always takes forever, diddling her hands and whatnot. When eventually she comes back, it turns out she's been chatting to the attendant. I said, "What about?" She said, "Hanging. She was in favour of stiffer penalties for minor offences." I thought, well, we know better, our Graham and me. I wish you'd been there, love. You could have given her the statistics. Where are we going for our tea? The thing about Mammy is, though she's not had a proper education, she's picked up enough from me to be able to hold her own in discussions about up-to-the-minute issues like the environment or the colour problem. And for a woman of her age and background, she has a very liberal slant. She'll look at my guardian and she actually thinks for herself. As Dr. Chowdhury said to me, he said, "Full marks, Graham. The best way to avoid a broken hip is to have a flexible mind. Keep up the good work." Well, they go mad round the war memorial, so when we cross over, I'll generally slip my arm through hers till we're safely on the pavement. Only once we're there, she'll postpone letting it go, because once upon a time, we got stopped by one of these questionnaire women who reckoned to take us for husband and wife. Well, I mean, her mum's got white hair. Anyway, she was doing this dodge, clinging on, and I said, "Ma'am, let go my arm." And I didn't exactly wrench it, only next thing I look, she's flat on the pavement. I said, "Oh, my God, Mother." Well, people gather round and I pick up her bag and she sits up. She says, "I've laddered both my stockings." I said, "Never mind your stockings, what about your pelvis?" She said, "It's these bifocals. They tell you not to look down. I was avoiding some sick." Somebody says, "That's a familiar voice." And there's a little fella bending over her. Green trilby hat, shorty raincoat. "Hello," he says. "Remember me?" Well, she doesn't remember people, I know for a fact, because she swore me down she'd never met Joy Buckle, who teaches flowers in felt and fabric at my day centre. I said, "You have met Joy. You knitted her a tea cosy." That's all she can knit, actually, tea cosies and bed socks. Both outmoded articles. I said to her, "Branch out. I mean, if you can knit tea cosies, you can do skiing hats." She said, "Well, I will." Only I have to stand over her. She still leaves a hole for the spout. I said, you have met Joy? Because she said she had some shocking eyebrows. She said, I hope you didn't tell her that. I said, of course I didn't tell her that. She said, well, I don't remember. And that's the way she is. She does not remember. And here's this little fella saying, remember me. I said, no, she won't. Come on, Mother, let's get you up. Only she says, remember you? Of course. It's Frank Turnbull. It must be 50 years. He says, 52. Filey, 1934. She says, Seacrest. He says, no sand in the bedrooms. And they both crack out laughing. Meanwhile, she's still stuck there on the cold pavement. I said, come on, Mother. We don't want piles. Only he butts in again. With respect, it's advisable not to move a person until it's been ascertained no bones are broken. I was in the St. John's Ambulance Brigade. Yes, she says, and who did you learn your bandaging on? And they both burst out laughing again. He has on these bright yellow gloves. Could have been a bookie. Eventually, I get my arms round her waist and hoist her up, only his lordship's not much help. Claims to have a bad back. When finally I've got her restored to the perpendicular, she introduces him. This is Frank Turnbull, a friend of mine from the old days. What old days? First time I knew there were any old days. Turns out he's a gents outfitter, semi-retired, shop in Bradford and some sort of outlet in Morecambe. I thought, well, that accounts for the yellow gloves. Straight off he takes charge. What you need now, Vera, is a cup of coffee. I said, well, we were just going for some tea, weren't we, Mother? Vera. Oh, her name's not Vera. She's never been called Vera. My dad never called her Vera. Except once, when they were wheeling him into the theatre. Vera. Right, he says, follow me. And he puts his arm through hers. Oh, careful, she says. You'll make my boyfriend jealous. I didn't say anything. Now, the cafe we generally patronise is just that bit different. It's plain, but it's classy. There are no cloths on the tables. The menu comes on a little slate, and the waitresses wear their own clothes. It's as if they're just doing it for the fun of it. The stuff's all homemade, and we're both big fans of the Dayton walnut bread. I said, this is the place. Only Mr. Turnbull goes straight past. No, he says, I know somewhere. Just opened. Press on. Now, if there's one thing Mother and I are agreed on, it's that red is a common colour. Well, the whole place is done out in red. Lampshades red, waitresses in red, plates red. On the table, those plastic sauce dispenser things got up to look like tomatoes, also red. And when I look, there's a chip in the sugar. I thought, oh, Mother won't like this. Only she says, oh, this looks cheerful, doesn't it, Graham? I said, there's a chip in the sugar. A detail, he says. They're still having their teething troubles. Is it 3 coffees? I said, we like tea. Only Mother says, no. I feel like an adventure. I'll have coffee. He gets the menu, puts his hand on hers. Might I advise, he says, a cheeseburger? She says, oh, what's that? He says, well, it's fresh country beef mingled with golden fried onions, topped off with toasted cheese, served with French fries and lemon wedge. She says, ooh, lemon wedge. That sounds nice, doesn't it, Graham? I thought, well, I hope you can keep it down, or it'll be the pizza story all over again. One mouthful, and at 4 o'clock in the morning, I was still stuck at her bedside with the bucket. She says, I like new experiences in eating. I had a pizza once, didn't I, Graham? I didn't say anything. They fetch the food and she wires in. He says, are you enjoying your cheeseburger? She says, I am. Would I be mistaken in thinking that is tomato sauce? He says it is. She says, give us a squirt. And they both burst out laughing again. "Glass cups, Graham," he says. "Be careful. We'll see up your nose." More laughter. "Graham's quite refined," Mother said. "He often has a dry sherry." Well, Mr. Turnbull said he could do with smartening himself up a bit. Plastic Mac. He wants one of those quilted jobs. I've shifted a lot of those. "I don't like those quilted jobs," I said. "He sweats," Mother said. "No excuse for that in this day and age," Mr. Turnbull said, "the range of preparations there are on the market. You want to invest in some roll-on deodorant." Everybody could hear. "And flares are anathema even in Bradford." "Graham doesn't care," Mother said. "He reads a lot." "So what?" Mr. Turnbull said. "I've known several big readers who still manage to be men about town. Lovett Green's a nice shade. I know one thing. If I were squiring a young lady like this around town, I wouldn't do it in grey socks and sandals. These shoes are Italian. Feel." "I always think Graham would have made a good parson," Mother said, feeling his foot. "Only he doesn't believe in God." "Oh, that's no handicap these days," Mr. Turnbull said. "What do you do?" "Well, he's between jobs at present," Mother said. "He used to do soft toys for handicapped children. And he was making paper flowers at one stage." I went to the toilet. When I came back, Mr. Turnbull said, "I don't believe in mental illness. 9 times out of 10, it's a case of pulling your socks up." I didn't say anything. Mother said, "Yes. Well, I think the pendulum's gone too far." She didn't look at me. "It's like these girls not eating," Mr. Turnbull said. "They'd eat if they'd been brought up like us, Vera. Nothing to eat." "That's right," Mother said. "They have it too easy. Did you marry?" "Twice," he said. "I buried Amy last May." That was heartbroken, but life has to go on. I've got a son in Stevenage, 2 grandsons, one at the motorbike stage. "Do you drive?" "No," I said. "You do, Graham," Mother said. "You had that scooter thing." I said it was only a moped. She said, "Well, a moped. They're all the same." I can't get him to blow his own trumpet. "I've got a Rover 2000, Mr. Turnbull said. "Handles like a dream." I think the solution to mental illness is hard physical work. Making raffia mats, I'd go mad. "Yes," said Mother, "only they do pottery as well. I've seen some lovely ashtrays." "Feather bedding," Mr. Turnbull said. "Do you like these Pakistanis?" "Well, up to a point," Mother said. "We have a nice newsagent. Graham thinks we're all the same." I said, "I thought you did." She said, "Well, I do when you explain it all to me, Graham, but then I forget the explanation. I'm back to square one." "There is no explanation," Mr. Turnbull said. "They sell mangoes in our post office. What explanation is there for that?" "I know," Mother said. "I smelt curry on my woman's own." I didn't say anything. He gets the bill. "I'll pay," he said. "My birthday this year." He runs us home. Says he'll give us a tinkle next time he's in the neighbourhood. He's often round there tracking down 2-tone cardigans. "Your mother's a grand woman," he said. "You want to cherish her." "Oh, he does," Mother said. "Don't you? You're my boyfriend, aren't you, Graham?" She put her arm through mine. must be a famine on somewhere, because we were just letting our midday meal go down today when the vicar calls round with some envelopes. Breezes in, anorak, running shoes. Says, I always look forward to coming to this house, Mrs. Whittaker. He's got the idea she's deaf, which she isn't. It's one of the few things she's not. He says, do you know why? It's because you two remind me of Jesus and his mother. Well, I always thought Jesus was a bit offhand with his mother. On one occasion, he was downright snotty with her. But I don't say anything. And of course, Madam's over the moon. She can't be compared with the Queen Mother. The Virgin Mary is the next best thing. Are you married, she says. Asks him every time, never remembers. No, Mrs. Whittaker, he says. I am married to God. Oh, she says. Where does that leave you with the housework? Well, he says, I don't do as well as your Graham. He's got this place like a palace. She said, well, I do my whack. I washed 4 pairs of stockings this morning. She hadn't. She just put them in the basin. They'd slipped her mind. And the rest of the operation devolved on me. How are you today, Mrs. Whittaker, he says. I'm stiff down one side. I said, she had a fall yesterday. She said, I never did. I said, you did. You had a fall. You ran into Mr. Turnbull. That's right, she said. I did. And starts rooting in her handbag for a lipstick. She looks at the vicar. Is that one of them anoraki things? They've gone out now. If you want to look like a man about town, you want one of these continental quilts. Oh, said the vicar. I said, she means quilted jackets. She said, he knows what I mean. And where do you get those shoes? He said, they're training shoes. She said, training for what? Are you not fully qualified? He said, Mrs. Whittaker, if Jesus were alive today, I think you'd find these are the kind of shoes he would be wearing. She said, not if his mother had anything to do with it. She'd have him down at Stead and Simpson's, get him into some good brogues. Somebody was telling me the Italians do nice shoes. This gives the vicar his cue to start on about people with no shoes at all, and via this to the famine in Ethiopia. I fork out 50p, which he says will feed 6 families for a week. She says, well, it would have bought me some Quality Street. When I get him to the door, he says, I take my hat off to you, Graham. I've got a mother of my own. I go back in, she says, Vicar, you look more like the paper boy. How can you look up to somebody in pumps? Just then there's a knock at the door. She says, get down. He's back. Only it isn't. It's Mr. Turnbull. Different outfit this time. Little suede jacket, corduroy collar, maroon trousers. She says, ooh, you're colourful. He said, we just happen to have these slacks on offer. I wonder whether you fancied a run out to Bolton Abbey. She said, ooh, Bolton Abbey. That's right up our street, isn't it, Graham? Graham's good with buildings. He knows all the periods of houses. There's one period that's just come in, and other people don't like it yet, only we do, don't we, Graham? I said, I don't know. She said, you do? What is it? I said, Victorian. She said, that's it, Victorian. Only a lot's been pulled down. Mr. Turnbull yawned. I've got a little bungalow, he said. Ooh, that's nice, Mother said. I like a nice bungalow, don't you, Graham? I said, yes, provided it's not a blot on the landscape. Ooh, mine's architect designed, Mr. Turnbull said. Patio, breakfast bar. It overlooks a beauty spot. Ooh, sounds tip-top, doesn't it, Graham? Mother said. Well, we'd better be getting our skates on. I have to pick up a load of green 3/4 length wind cheaters from Ilkley, Mr. Turnbull said. There won't really be room for a third party. Isn't there something on at the pictures? Oh, you'll be happy reading, Mother said. Won't you, Graham? Anyway, Mr. Turnbull said, you don't always want to be with your mother at your age, do you, Graham? I didn't say anything. I've been laid on my bed reading. Only, I think there's somebody looking at the house. Once or twice I've thought I've heard a knock at the door, but I haven't gone. In case there's nobody there. Today they've been over to York. It was after 7 when he dropped her off. He'll generally come in, but not this time. Just gave her a little kiss. She has to bend down. I said, "Did you have a good time?" She said, "Oh, yes. We had egg and chips, tea and bread and butter. We've got a lot in common. And there's a grand new car park." I said, "Did you go in the Minster?" She said, "No. Frank's not keen on old buildings. We want to look more to the future. He says they've built a spanking new precinct over at Bradford, so that's going to be next on the agenda." "You're quiet." I said, "Well, do you wonder? Dr. Chowdhury said I should have a stable environment. This isn't a stable environment with your fancy men popping in every 5 minutes." She said, "He's not my fancy man." I said, "He's your fancy man in embryo." She said, "You know I don't know what that means." I said, "How old are you?" She said, "I don't know." I said, "You do know." She said, "I don't. Tell me." I said, "You're 72. She said, "Well, that's not all that old." "How old was Winston Churchill?" I said, "When?" She said, "Ooh, you think you've got it over me, Graham Whittaker. Well, I'll tell you this, I remember better with Frank. He was telling me about the economy. You've got it all wrong." I said, "How?" She says, "I don't know, but you have. Blaming it on the government. Frank says it's the blacks." I didn't say anything. Came upstairs. When I went down, she still sat there, hat and coat on. I said, "Oh, do you want to knit him a tea cosy?" She said, "No. I don't think he's the tea cosy type. When I first knew him, he had a motorbike and sidecar. Anyway, I think it's got beyond the tea cosy stage." I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "Graham, my one aim in life is for you to be happy. If I thought that by dying I could make you happy, I would." I said, "Ma'am, your dying wouldn't make me happy. The reverse, it would make me unhappy. Anyway, you're not going to die." She said, "No, I'm not. I'm going to get married. And the honeymoon's in Tenerife. Have a tablet." She made a cup of tea. I said, "How can you go to Tenerife? You said you were smothered at Scarborough." She said, "It's a 4-star hotel. They have tip-top air conditioning. You have your breakfast at a long table." I said, "What about your bowels?" She said, "What about my bowels?" I said, "You said they were unpredictable at Morecambe. Get them to the Canary Islands, they're going to be all over the place." She said, "Who's talking about the Canary Islands? We're going to Tenerife." I said, "What about post-Tenerife? Where are you going to live?" She said, "Here. Frank says he may be away on and off on business, but he wants to call this home." I said, "What about me?" She went into the kitchen. "Well, we wondered whether you might not prefer to go back to the hostel. You were happy at the hostel. You rubbed shoulders with all sorts. I said, Ma'am, this is my home. She said, a man doesn't want to be living with his mother at your age, Frank says. Did you have a tablet? Now I can't sleep. There's a car parked outside, and I can't see, but I think there's somebody in it, watching like they used to do before. I thought all that chapter was closed. This morning I went to community caring down at the health centre. It caters for all sorts. Steve, who runs it, is dead against what he calls the ghetto approach. What he's after is a nice mix of personality difficulties as providing the most fruitful exercise in problem solving and the more realistic model of society in general. It's a constant flow of coffee, oiling the wheels, Steve calls it. And we're all of us encouraged to ventilate our problems and generally let our hair down. Only I've sometimes felt a bit out of it as I don't have any particular problems. So this time, when Steve says, right, chaps and chapesses, who wants to set the ball rolling, I get in quick and tell them about Mother and Mr. Turnbull. When I've finished, Steve says, thank you, Graham, for sharing your problem with us. Is there anybody would like to kick it around? Well, first off the mark is Leonard, who wonders whether Graham has sufficiently appreciated that old people can fall in love and have meaningful relationships generally the same as young people, which is understandable coming from Leonard, who's 65, but he doesn't have meaningful relationships. He's been had up for exposing himself in Sainsbury's doorway. As Mother said, Tesco, you could understand it. Then Janice chips in. Had they been having sexual intercourse? I said I didn't want to think about it. Steve said, why? I said, I don't know. So Steve says, well, perhaps what we should be discussing is why Graham is being so defensive about sexual intercourse. I said, Steve, I am not being defensive about sexual intercourse. This is my mother. Then Jackie, who's 9 parts lesbian, says, yes, Graham, but she's also a woman. I couldn't believe this. I said, Jackie, you are an ex-battered wife. I didn't think you approved of marriage. She said, I approve of caring marriage. I said, this isn't caring marriage. She says, what's Tenerife? That's caring. All I got was a black eye and a day trip to Fleetwood. Then they all have a go. Get Graham. Steve sums up. The general feeling of the group is that Graham could be more open. I said, Steve, how can I be more open when there is somebody watching the house? I wanted to discuss this, only Leonard leaps in and says he feels the need to talk through an episode behind British Home Stores. I'll stick it for a bit longer and then come home. Mother sat there, all dolled up, earrings in, chiffon scarf, lathered in makeup. Oh, she says, I thought you were Mr. Turnbull. I said, no. She says, I'm just going to the lavatory. She goes 3 times in the next 10 minutes. I said, you're not getting married today, are you? She said, oh, no. There's a new Asda superstore opened over at Bingley. They thought we'd give it the once-over. Frank says they have a very good selection of suntan lotions. I said, Ma'am, there's somebody watching the house. She said, I want to pick out 1 or 2 tissues, and Frank's looking for a little chamois for his windscreen. Then he's promised me something called a cheeseburger. There's a cafe that's part of the complex. Just then there's a toot on the horn, and she runs to the lab again. I said, Ma'am, don't go. Don't leave me. She said, I'm not giving in to you. You're a grown man. Is my underskirt showing? He toots again. She says, read one of your magazines. Poach yourself an egg. I said, Ma'am. She said, there's that bit of chicken in the fridge. You could iron that vest. And have a tablet. Give us a kiss. Toodle pip. I thought I'd go sit in the back room where they couldn't see me. And I pull the curtains. And I'm sitting there in the dark when I think I hear a knock at the door. I don't move. And there's another knock, louder. I do what Dr. Chowdhury says and tell myself it's not happening, only it is. Somebody shouts through the letterbox. I know you're in there. Open this door. So I do. And there is somebody there. It's a woman. She says, are you the son? I said, what? She said, are you the son? I'm the daughter. I said, have you been watching the house? She said, on and off. Why? I said, nothing. She said, I don't know what there is to look so suited about. I said, you'd better come in. It's 9 o'clock when I hear the car outside. I'm sitting watching TV. I said, did you have a nice time then? She said, yes. Yes, we did, thank you. I said, did you get your suntan lotion? She said, what suntan lotion? I said, you're going to get some suntan lotion. Never mind. You've forgotten. How's Mr. Turnbull? She said, Frank? Oh, he's all right. She took her things off. She said, I'm sure you could get to like him, Graham, if only you got to know him. I said, well, you want to bring him in. She says, I will next time. It'd be nice if we could go off as a threesome now and again. What have you done? I said, oh, nothing. Just sat here. She said, and you've been all right? I said, yes. She said, you see, there wasn't anybody outside. I said, oh, yes, there was. She said, oh, Graham, did you take a tablet? Take a tablet. I said, I don't want a tablet. I'll tell you who was sat outside. Mrs. Pamela Musgrave. She said, who? I said, Mrs. Pamela Musgrave, née Turnbull, the daughter of your hubby-to-be. She said, he hasn't got a daughter. He's got a son. He hasn't got a daughter. Oh, you're making stuff up now, Graham. Have a tablet. I said, I'm not making stuff up. And there's something else I'm not making up. Mrs. Turnbull. She said, there isn't a Mrs. Turnbull. She's dead. I'm going to the lavatory. I said, there is a Mrs. Turnbull. She's not dead. She's in a wheelchair with a broken heart. He's been having you on. After a bit, she comes out. You're just saying all this, Graham Whittaker. I said, I am not. Telephone, the number is on the pad. His wife's disabled, has been for 10 years. The daughter looks after them. You're not the first. One woman, it was going to be Barbados. Somebody spotted you at Bolton Abbey. A well-wisher. Tenerife. Later on, I took her up a cup of tea. She'd been crying. She said, I bought this little bed jacket. I said, I'm sorry, ma'am. She said he was right enough. I mean, what can you expect at my age? How old am I? I said, you're 72. She said, that's another thing. I remembered with Frank, I don't remember with you. I said, I'm sorry. She said, you're not sorry. You didn't like him. How can you be sorry? I said, he wasn't good enough for you. She said, I'm the best judge of that. He was natty. Won't be said for you. Starts crying again. I said, I understand, ma'am. She says, you don't understand. How can you understand you? You're not normal. I said, I'm going to bed. Later on, she comes shouting outside the bedroom door. You think you've got it over me, Graham Whittaker? Well, you haven't. I've got it over you. I said, go back to bed. She said, I know the kind of magazines you read. I said, chess. You'll catch cold. She said, they never are chess. Chess with no clothes on. Chess in the birthday suits, that kind of chess. Chess men. I said, go to bed. And turn your blanket off. Next day, she's right as rain. Never mentions it anyway. Except just as we're coming out of the house. She says, I do love you, Graham. I said, well, I love you. She said, anyway, he had a hearing aid. What's on the agenda for today, then? I said, I thought we might have a little drive to Ripon. She said, oh, that's nice. We can go in the cathedral. We like old buildings, don't we? You and me. And she put her arm through mine.